The Edmonton Oilers appear to be hiring Ken Holland to be the team's next general manager. We'll discuss the decision and give you my thoughts coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. There appear to be reports indicating that the Edmonton Oilers are set to hire Ken Holland to be the next general manager of the franchise. Of course, there have been plenty of updates from Brian Rashog lately, who covers the Oilers closely, as the process here to hire the next general manager has intensified. It appeared to be down to a short list, but it seems as though for the last number of days it's been reported that the Oilers' first choice has been former GM of the Red Wings, Ken Holland, but at first he seemed to be maybe a little bit reluctant to accept the position. Then on Saturday night, it was leaked out that he was being offered a 5-year contract at $5 million per year. That is quite a hefty salary to be a general manager in the NHL. So that's certainly probably tough for Ken Holland to turn down. So now we have reports from Rashog indicating that Holland appears to be set to accept the position and be the team's next general manager. Now, there does appear to be a wide range of opinions out there on social media. I've seen many people talking on social media unhappy about this. Some people seem to be quite pleased with it as well. So let's take a quick look here at the history of Ken Holland. Of course, he's been very much in the NHL here for a really, really long time. I've seen some reports indicating that he kind of lucked into the fact that the Red Wings had a lot of good pieces already in place when he took over as general manager. Of course, as GM of the Wings, they won multiple Stanley Cups, had a 25-year playoff history streak. They had a lot of success, and he certainly was a bigger part of that than I think some people might be giving him credit for. Now, Ken Holland has worked for the Detroit Red Wings for a really long time. He was a part of the organization for an extended period of time before he was GM. He started off as a scout for a few years. Then he became their director of amateur scouting for, I believe it was 7 years. Then he became an assistant GM for 3 years before being GM, which he's held for an extremely long period of time here, up until not long ago when he was given a different title and Steve Yzerman took over the role of general manager. So, of course, Ken Holland and those other jobs certainly has a ton of experience when it comes to scouting other players, drafting and developing. That was something that was a big part of the roles that he held in the past. Of course, the Detroit Red Wings are an organization and a team that has drafted extremely well over the years, not only with their first round selections, but a lot of players, a lot of guys that turned out to be star players were guys they found in the later rounds, and a lot of that not only falls on the GM, but mostly on the amateur scouting peoples. I mean, those people play a huge role for NHL clubs. Oftentimes the GMs get a lot of the glory and a lot of the praise, and at the same time, a lot of the hate as well when things don't go so well. They have a staff of people that play big roles in assisting them to make those final decisions. So Ken Holland, in my opinion, certainly is very strong in the drafting area, certainly, in the scouting area as well. So I think he can bring a lot of great experience to the Edmonton Oilers. He's done nothing but had a lot of success with the Red Wings. Like any general manager around the NHL, especially one that's been with their club for such an extended period of time, there's bound to be things you could pick apart. I'm sure there's some contracts and some trades that you could say that weren't overly favorable. I do think Ken Holland, if there was anything negative you can say about him, is the fact that he kind of committed himself too long to too many guys on that team. Obviously, after having a lot of success, the Red Wings are not the only organization you see do this. Oftentimes, players get rewarded with too much money, too much term because of the previous success they had, and now they're stuck with some bad contracts. Obviously, guys like Justin Abdelkader and Darren Helm are prime examples of that. They were there through a lot of the success of the Red Wings as well. Even had long-term deals in place for some other guys. Like Johan Franzen was another one, ended up on LTIR for such an extended period of time. But, Ken Holland certainly knew how to put together a strong team. He did have a pretty good team when he took over as GM, but he certainly had a lot of work to do to keep it there, and he's had that role for such a long time. So overall, I don't think there's a lot of negative things you can say about Ken Holland. I've got a lot of respect for him as a solid hockey man, done a pretty good job over the years. I do think he can bring a lot of things to the Oilers that will certainly help. Now, it's being reported as well that he'll have complete control over hockey operations. They're saying that Bob Nicholson really won't be involved in that aspect. He might be able to take on a bigger role. Not really sure exactly what bigger role that could be. That seems unclear. Bob Nicholson's time with the Oilers certainly hasn't had a lot of success, so I'm not really sure exactly how that's going to work. But if Ken Holland makes all the final decisions when it comes to hockey operations, that likely would be a good thing as well. There was also some reports as well that, of course, if he becomes the general manager, that Dave Tippett might be the head coach, but those reports are being denied as well. But of course, Dave Tippett works for the new Seattle franchise. And there has been some speculation within the recent months here that Tippett might want to get back into NHL coaching. So it is a possibility that he does resurface as either a head coach at some point with some franchise. It doesn't look like it's going to be the Seattle franchise, but of course that very well could still happen, but that's a couple years away. So hard to say on that front. But that report apparently has been denied by multiple sources. So for right now, we'll say that's not the case. But of course, if Holland's still kind of just in the process of finalizing, the fact that he's going to take this job, it was reported earlier that he was informing the Red Wings ownership group of his decision to accept this job with the Oilers and move on. I know when we announced the Steve Yzerman signing as being the new GM of the Red Wings, of course, at that time, Holland was given a different position. I know many Wings fans were convinced that he was going to stay with the franchise longer term. But at that point, we did report that he was still very interested in being a GM and that there were some positions that he apparently was in the mix for, including the Oilers or possibly the Seattle group. He had been linked there quite a lot as well over the past even year or so. But obviously, looks as though he's destined to be the next general manager of the Edmonton Oilers. I really thought for a period of time there that they were leaning towards hiring Mark Hunter. Of course, Mark Hunter previously worked at the Maple Leafs as an assistant GM, has been involved in the London Knights program for an extended period of time and did an awesome job. I really do think Mark Hunter does deserve an opportunity to be a general manager in the NHL. I really thought that was going to be his opportunity there in Edmonton, but ultimately they were leaning towards experience. Of course, Nicholson and Holland have known each other for a long time as well, both well-experienced hockey guys, and they decided to go in the way of experience here. Holland's going to have a huge challenge ahead of him. There's a lot of things going on with the Oilers that need to be fixed. I'm not sure how quickly he's going to do it, but if, for example, if you see what Lou Lamoriello did with the New York Islanders in one short year, obviously they lost their star player in John Tavares, and look at what he was able to do with that franchise. A lot of the moves he made during the offseason might not have looked to be great, but they ended up having a really solid regular season and going to the second round of the playoffs. So could Holland have the same effect on the Edmonton Oilers in just a year's time? It's certainly a possibility, but at least on paper, it looks like a daunting challenge. Obviously, I'm not convinced right now that Mikko Koskinen is a starting solid goaltender. I mean, he could turn into a 1A, 1B type of player if they have another goalie he could platoon with. That might be a possibility, but it's probably a best-case scenario in my opinion. So they certainly need to shore up their goaltending woes. The blue line certainly had his weaknesses as well. He's got some bad contracts on there. Obviously, Sekera hasn't been healthy the last couple of years. The contractor Chris Russell doesn't look fantastic. So obviously they could use some help on the back end. Up front, of course, you got superstars like McDavid and Draisaitl to build around, which is certainly a luxury that most teams don't have. So obviously Holland will have that, but obviously they need a lot more secondary scoring. They need to work on developing their prospects. One thing that the Red Wings always did extremely well with, which I know sometimes might have frustrated some fans, but long-term always worked out, was they knew how to develop their prospects. They didn't rush anybody to the NHL. It was pretty rare that you've seen even a first-round pick go straight to the NHL. In recent years, Dylan Larkin was one of the few exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, they always let them develop in the American League. They took their time, developed them properly, and that's what this Oilers organization needs. They've been rushing players for too long. They're kind of in a hurry to get things improved. Sometimes that's not fair to the players being thrust into those roles. So I do think overall that Ken Holland could possibly be a great person here for the Oilers to hire as the next general manager, but it's not going to be no easy task based on the position that they're in, and there's obviously no guarantee it's going to work. It largely depends, too, on who he ends up deciding to hire as to be the next head coach of the Edmonton Oilers. Let me know what your thoughts and opinions are down in the comment section. What do you think of Ken Holland being the next general manager of the Edmonton Oilers? And do you have any inklings on who he might look to bring in as the next head coach? If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there is plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and give it a thumbs up before you go. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.